are you. So let's go praise the Lord. Father Abraham. Hey, family. This is your host, Jermaine Thomas, with another episode of Sunday School Live. Listen, there is never a dull moment where Sunday school experience will never ever be the same. Tuning in with us. Oh man, I'm glad to have those joining us today, or those that will be watching us by replay. Hey, Mora, thank you for tuning in and jumping in to Sunday School Live with your host Jermaine Thomas, aka the Professor. Listen, I'm excited about this new episode series. Last week we had a lot of technical issues that was occurring, and so this would be a part two to episode 8. And so we jumped on for about a half an hour, but we started the new year with a new episode series. And so we'll be getting into that in a little bit. Let me bring up a few things here. Uh, okay, we'll be getting into that in a little while. And uh, our show is exploring and rethinking what is spirit and truth, and we'll be looking to go to podcasts real soon. So I've been looking for platforms that would be really ideal for us to jump onto. But this episode series has been really phenomenal. You can also follow and track us on YouTube because we go live on YouTube as well. But again, listen, go back, start at episode 7, and then follow up with episode 8, part 1, and then episode 8 today, which is part 2, to kind of get a substantive overview of this dialogue. Because you're gonna need that context if you're just jumping in today. So if it's your first time viewing us, listen, welcome. As I always say, this is not an answer show. This is an exploration show that we will begin to explore uh, present truths. We explore thinking around the scriptures with respect to the Christian faith. We would even hit taboo subjects and topics. And so it started with our episode series exploring the anatomy of belief. And that was a phenomenal episode series. So if you get a chance to, please go back and check that out as well. Um, and so I want to, before I bridge over into what I want to talk about today and cover in this particular episode, I just want to take and shift our attention to, to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., um, a very heroic person, a civil rights leader, a divergent thinker, a hero of our day, a hero of the ages, if you will, who championed the civil rights movement. And through his movement and through his efforts, brought about a real catalyst of change that is still being felt today because of his efforts. So, in honoring him on his birthday and honoring him in his legacy, I just want to take the time out of Sunday School Live to acknowledge him. And much love to our Goma family and to those that are tuning in. And so, what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to take a short moment and just share an excerpt of a speech he gave, and just for us to just take it in. I think uh, it's a constant reminder of how far we come as a nation, and how much more uh, we need to go as a nation, working together hand in hand. And so I'm going to bring this up and play an excerpt from Dr. Martin Luther King to just honor him and his legacy, and then we'll go into the show. Okay. God bless you guys. Hold on.
All we do, America, is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Wow. I don't know about you, but every time I listen to Dr. King, I mean, I get chills. I get those hairy goosebumps, if you will, and just a man of strength, a man of resolve, and demonstrated astronomical of human resiliency in the face of that time and that era in our nation's history, in addressing the injustices of his day. In for some, in some aspects, there's still a fight today. And I've often said that as long as we're celebrating the first black this and the first black that, that means that we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go as a nation. There's still issues in our nation that's worth addressing to need reconciliation. So hey, Catherine. Hey, Felix. Hey, thank you guys for tuning in. Just wanted to acknowledge Dr. Martin Luther King for his birthday and his accomplishments to American progress as a nation as a whole, particularly for the African American people in the fight against injustice and during the civil rights movement. So that's that. Listen, go back, take the opportunity to reflect, play Martin Luther King's speech at DC during the march, and play that for your family, and just kind of just let that reverberate into your heart and your mind. It's definitely needed and warranted in this day and age. But anyway, moving on with our show. Like I said, this is episode 8 and exploring and rethinking what is spirit and truth, or episode 8, part 2, to really grab a hope to the substance of what I want to address in this episode series. You have to go back to 7, but just to highlight some points even from there. What I did was I took some experts, subject experts on particular subject matters, particularly uh, this theologian who kind of articulated what spirit and truth actually means, with respect to biblical hermeneutics and context. And oftentimes, our association with the word spirit and truth is often associated, with worship, with respect to worshiping God in spirit in the context of the scriptures, which we correlate as truth. And so he broke that down. He began to explain that that's not actually two words, right? It's actually one word. And so culturally speaking, the audience at the day would have understood Jesus to mean to worship God in a more spiritual way, more than just about spirit and truth. That's really the essence of what that phrase really means. And so we're exploring and looking at what is spirit or what is spirituality, and looking at it from various perspectives and various schools of thought. And so one of the clips of a favorite movie of mine, I put up, and I think I'm gonna play it again, and then I'm going to play another supplemental video to give some context, and then I dialogue from there as well, as we end this particular episode 8, part 2. Again, go back and check out part 1. I covered an awesome video, utilized an awesome video by Rob Bell. Man, and he broke it down. It was really phenomenal. I've encouraged people, I just played the excerpts because I wanted to pull out certain content to reinforce some of the ideas that I was flowing with in that particular episode. But it was really phenomenal as he talked about, how everything is spiritual. And so it was really good. I mean, he came from a scientific and philosophical perspective. And I mean, he laid this thing out, from beginning to end. And he used Genesis, as his context and his foundation, and began to spell this thing out. It just reinforces the essence and the reality of how beautifully and wonderfully we're made. And that every man, every woman, every girl, every boy, every human bears the image of God. And so the substance and the essence, of where we come from and whose we are, we're born from above. And so, he reinforces that in a very articulated way. I was really impressed. So that was captured in episode 8, part 1. So go back and check that out. But listen, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. I'm going to bring up this video because I think it's just the point in this clip just hits home. It really hits home, and just a reminder. Sometimes we've associated ourselves, or we base a context or a view of ourselves from a low level perspective. I say that, or from a humanistic perspective, or Dr. Bill Henshaw would say from an academic religion perspective, right? That's often how sometimes we characterize ourselves. But here, and this is where a lot of us are, or where we come from, because of how we've been conditioned socially, how we've been conditioned religiously, how we've been educated in our school systems, in our Western schools of thought, and how we reinforce certain notions and ideas that keep us from looking beyond the reality of what is now, based on, our sense realm of reality, right? If we can't taste it, touch it, see it, or hear it, it's not real, right? So I'm going to play this clip, and then we'll go into our dialogue for today.
I spent my last dollar getting here. One way ticket, and you're talking to me about healing through belief.
You're a man looking at the world through a keyhole, and you've spent your whole life trying to widen that keyhole, to see more, to know more. And now, on hearing that it can be widened in ways you can't imagine, you reject the possibility.
No, I reject it because I do not believe in fairy tales about chakras or energy or the power of belief. There is no such thing as spirit. We are made of matter and nothing more. You're just another tiny, momentary speck within an indifferent universe.
You think too little of yourself.
Oh, you think you see through me, do you? Well, you don't. But I see through you. do to me?
I pushed your astral form out of your physical form.
What's in that tea? Psilocybin? LSD?
What's in that tea?
With a little
LSD. Oh man, that's one of my favorite Marvel movies, and that scene is just so classic to me because it speaks to the context, of sometimes of our own reasoning and how we can become limited or how we can limit our own selves because we have a certain way of reasoning, and that becomes our lens and how we perceive ourselves and we live life. I think I talked about this last week that we begin to live life on life terms. But when you realize, that you are a divinely inspired human being, right, that lacks no good thing, it changes your perspective and outlook in life, and it can have a real world impact, uh, not just on how we perceive the world around us, but even how you see and perceive yourselves, and begin to live out of the reality, of spirit and truth, or out of the reality of being, right? And so a lot of this commentary in the series, and then in episode 9, I'll get into exploring what is truth, and kind of tackling that. In this particular part, I really wanted to hit and kind of flush out, and give some substance to the term spirituality or spirit, right? And give some substance to that. So when we go back and we read that verse, those that worship God in spirit and truth, we'll go beyond, the context or how we've been conditioned to see that and associated with worship. I believe the highest form of worship is you being genuinely and you being your genuine and authentic self. A buddy of mine said one time, he said, trees give God worship, more worship than we as human beings sometimes. Why? Because they're simply doing what they were created to do. And so I wanted to bring up, various supplemental content to kind of reinforce and flush out this term and definition of spirit, right? And so I have another commentator in resource I want to share. I think you'll find this really good. And so I play excerpts. Go back and look at these videos that I share. And if you want to know where to find it, please feel free to comment and share, and I would do just that. Okay. So hold on, I'm gonna bring this up. This is really really good. Okay. So hold on here. Again, I wanted to bring um, uh, uh, subject experts. Right, these are experts on these particular subjects. I'm not saying I'm not one. I think I'm fair enough, in giving my assessment perspectives, but listen, there's nothing wrong with bringing others in, and like I said, we'll have guests on, from time to time, like we had Brother Brian, Apostle Brian Christian on, to help us navigate, through what is contradictions, and navigating through that episode series of exploring anatomy of belief. So listen, I'm going to check myself out and be back in a minute, but check this out. This is really phenomenal.
The university's mission, as was um, shared before, communicating the principles and practices of spiritual psychology worldwide through the process of soul-centered education. So if I were you sitting out there, there'd be two sets of words, two experiences that we like better. It means that new out of the Piscean, this is very much of what I'll call a Piscean reality. This is the world that most of us live in, and it's characterized by striving from experiences that we don't like too well to experiences that we like better. That's probably in the broadest terms that I know of. So we want more money, we want a better job, we want a better relationship, we want all of these kinds of things. And this is the reality that the great preponderance of people on this planet are living in. Nothing wrong with that, and in fact, we're big supporters of that. because it always seemed to us that the more you have, the more you have to share. Never been a big proponent of poor is pure. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. The more I have, the more I have to share. So we refer to this as the goal line of life because it's usually measured in what are your goals? What do you want? And then we lay these things out and we go for it. What's less readily understood is that while this is going on, there's a whole other reality going on at the same time that we refer to as spiritual reality. Spiritual reality. And spiritual reality is something that, believe it or not, every single one of the world's major religions is in total agreement about. They would all tell you that if you follow in this particular direction, you're going to awaken into a higher level of consciousness that is generally referred to, we call it the soul line, as love. As love, pure and simple. What does that mean? But if who we are divine beings having a human experience, how can we become more of what we already are? If you're a divine being, your nature is love. Our first principle in loyalty to your soul is the nature of God is love. Every one of the world's religions agreed on that. Well, how can I become more of what I already am? You can't. You can't. What you can only do is awaken to that which you are. And therefore, you hear people talk about walking around asleep. Lots of things written about we wake up from our sleep, we wake up from the Maya, we wake up from the dream, we become more enlightened, we wake up. And that's true. That's exactly what happens. It's as if we're walking around with shades and we take them off one layer at a time and we start to see clearly. We start to see more clearly.
The whole commentary there is really, really good. It's just again, I want to pull out the excerpts and just kind of drive home some of the points there. But you're more than welcome to go back and check that out. But I mean, that's true, right? Our nature, if we really come to understand and aware that we're spiritual beings, and some would say, having a natural experience, but our nature is love itself. How can you be more than what you really are? So it's more so awakening, our context, for the most part. I ain't gonna say us, I'm gonna say myself. Most of my context of spirituality, has been based upon a certain condition. And my background is very charismatic, as far as the Christian church is concerned. And so the whole notion and reality of pursuing God was pursuing Him out of a place that I lacked something, pursuing Him out of effort, and not from a place of fullness that I had all things, or if I was separated from Him. So so spirituality, or association of spirituality was always referenced in some respect to something that I had to do, something I had to reach for. And God forbid if I did some sin or something wrong, I had to go back over, I had to go to the altar and then start back all over again. It's this rat race, if you will, that I was affixed to, a cycle, and one that never had any satisfaction, one that never landed you in a place of reality of rest. It was always a place, of striving. One of the things and approaches we take in social work, or the models of approaches we call it the strength perspective, And so, even though a client may come out of in a crisis situation, and where their deficits, are very evident, evident to themselves, and evident to others around them. And so, but what we do is we take them beyond, just the negative. We take them beyond, where they are. We show them the strengths that they have, and show them how to capitalize on that by giving them the resource, the education, and supports that they need, to raise their level of awareness and begin to realize, hey, I too can overcome, and that's identifying what I call that human strength, a human resiliency, and I believe it's the same, with respect to spirit and truth, right? That we're not relationally with Father, out of a place of deficit. Listen, our capacity of life or dealing with life is not from a place of weakness, it's from a place of strength. This is the reality of our nature, as divine beings, divinely inspired beings. And then even in that context of what he was outlining about natural reality and spiritual reality is not to propose, a duplistic or dualistic notion. Spirit, as Dr. K. Fairchild, is spirit through and through. Okay, it's just we're spirit slowed down to visibility. And so even science is affirming, these present truths and reality. Quantum science is really taking note, and really highlighting these truths that have been evident. And so what it does is it just reinforces us the the theme or Jesus' approach, or God's approach, as seen in the person of Jesus Christ, was never about religion. It was never about the do's, or the duties of religion. This is just out of us living out of the awareness of the reality that we're born from above, and Jesus modeled that for us. And so this is why the conversation he had with the woman at the well, she said, "Well, hey, you Jews go here, to have a relationship with God. Us Samaritans go here to have a relationship with God." And Jesus, killed that whole idea and notion, right? And so worship, or worshiping God in spirit and truth, is you living out your authentic and genuine self, right? Not out of a low place of thinking and perceiving of yourselves, but out of out of the strength perspective, I would say, right? That you're a divinely inspired human being. All right, you are a human being, not a human doing. I think Rob Bell championed that phrase. You're not a human doing, but you are a human being. And so, this is the foundation, that we begin to live our life from. This book becomes a part of our reality, if you will. And I think I shared before, about, Father began to deal with me. And he asked me. I had an encounter. I was crying, I was weeping. It was just a so real moment in His presence, and it wasn't one of those typical charismatic, encounters either. Okay, when we feel the anointing come down and things like that, that's our perception. That's how we've been aligned to see it. But this was coming from the inside out, and I heard him say to me, he said, "What is reality?" And I'm like, "Well, God, you all knowing, right? Like, why would you ask me what is reality? You know the answer. Give me the answer." But I knew then it was to dig deeper and to search, more to awaken to what is reality. But in that moment of just being overcome in His love and presence, and asking that question, I began to see creation in a whole different perspective. I began to see how everything is connected, how everything, works together. As the scriptures say, all things work together for His good, right? Or for the good of those that are called His purpose. But you see, okay, so for example, what I saw was, uh, the trees, right? Uh, it was just, it was really, what does a tree got to do with anything? But it was a reminder, of how life flows, and how minute to the details of creation. When it came to creation, God had us all in mind, and so the trees, where I saw these trees, and I saw how the rain was coming down and how the rain, gave the trees, the sun came out to give the trees the necessary nourishment that it needed. And from the trees, I think in Lion King he characterized the great circle of life, right? And so the trees gave us the necessary supplement we call oxygen, right, to live and to be sustained on this planet. So if we had no trees, we would have no oxygen. We would have no process to take out the carbon dioxide and things in the atmosphere and to process that to give us oxygen, right? And so just even in that notion and idea of perceptions, and so you would think like a person who's been trained and versed to know trees and the age of trees, they can look at a tree and like versus me, I admire nature, but I can't look at a tree and determine unless I've been trained and educated, right? To look at a tree and determine its age, what kind of tree it is, particularly how long it was there, how long it took to grow to its height, and things like that. And so they see you may see the tree, at a certain perception of reality, right? But with a certain information and awareness of understanding, like a person who study trees, they'll see a tree more distinctly than an untrained eye, like mine, right? So a trained eye will be able to see more distinctly and be more aware, and then can probably even take more of a greater value um, in creation than someone with an untrained eye. And so this is what awareness does. Coming into a greater awareness, of who we are. I like to say who we are, whose we are, or the reality of our identity and our nature. And so when you realize that your nature is love, you no longer have to address love, from a place of a deficit, and that's why a lot of people get to a lot of things in life because they don't see themselves in that way. This is what sin does. Mistaken identity causes you to miss the mark. To miss that mark in reality of who we are and living it out as sons and daughters of God. And so, and we live life on life terms. Maslow hierarchy of needs, is a great characterization, of how we live, out of a natural based reality. And again, it's like the brother said, there's nothing wrong, with wanting to get a higher pay, education and pursuits, but that becomes again we begin to deal with life on life terms when life is much more deeper and much more meaningful than just these outward things of striving or fear-based. The Bible talks about, take no thought for the things of tomorrow, for the things of tomorrow take care of themselves. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you. And so spirit and truth, or perceiving spirit and truth, is way more substantive. Okay, is way more substantive in understanding and in definition than to just associate it with worship or worship songs or worshiping God with a pure heart. Those how we Christianized that phrase, or how we Christianize spirituality. Okay, and that becomes a mark in a context that we live out of, or we can be like the brother in the character in the Doctor Strange movie. We could be highly versed and educated. Everything is based on reason. Humanist aspect of thinking. There is no such thing as spirit. This pseudo spiritual, pseudo religious stuff. And come from that perspective or that school of thought too. Religion is not just indicative of Christianity. Religion can fall in all kinds of aspects and categories, right? Of thinking. Religion is a thought. It's a thought process, if you will, and that could become our perceptions of understanding. But he had to have a taste of this reality, and Father loves us, right? And He'll meet us where we are, we're all at different spectrums of understanding. And Father loves us. And Dr. Catherine too talks about that. We're all at different spectrums of understanding because Father loves us. He'll meet us where we are, and give us that nudge. You had Peter, and the other apostles, right? They go with Jesus, on the Mount Transfiguration, and all of a sudden there's this transformational movement, right? Jesus starts glowing, or whatever. I can picture, glowing. I think about the was it the Last Dragon, the movie? And in there he had the glow, and then all of a sudden his aura came, and Bruce Leroy, however that moment went. I know if I was on that mountain, I probably would have been tripping out just like Peter was, right? So, so there's this moment, this unveiled moment, right? Where the natural realm of perception of reality meets this spiritual realm of reality, and they intersect, and then out steps from this spiritual realm of reality, which is a now reality. Okay, spirit. We say heaven, and we try to deduce heaven to be somewhere out there. And so this moment on Mount Transfiguration, it doesn't say that Moses and Elijah came from out there somewhere, right? So you can conclude that this reality, these two are, two transpounded realities. I don't know if that's the right word to say, but they're, interdisposed, realities. One without is not one without the other. You know what I mean? Again, this is what quantum science is affirming, in alludes to. They can't they don't have the terminology to define it that way. So they have all these, scientific terms and things that they call it, right? But so in this moment, um, this so real moment, unveiled moment, is overwhelming, right? So the disciples fall to the ground. I'm sure there's an immense presence, power, if you will, that's there, and taking place. And so Peter, bless Peter's heart, was so overtaken in joy. Like he's like, listen. He went old covenant with tabernacles, right? So he wanted to build a tabernacle to Moses, a tabernacle to Elijah, and a tabernacle to Jesus. And the father was showing, then the father, you hear the voice of the father say, "This is my son, in whom I well please, hear ye him." That it's not about this reality of doing, the law and the prophets, right? There's this better covenant, new covenant reality, that's taking place, that's accessible and available to all. Jesus' conversation, even to his particular audience of that day, was, hey, the kingdom of God is not low here or low there. This reality, of life is present on the inside of you. You don't have to go looking for it. You don't have to go searching for God out there somewhere. The reality of the essence of all that you are and all that you need is on the inside of you. And when I say that, and all that you need, that doesn't mean, because we thrive in community. And so the need of others to also come along to help us to walk that out, is just as important. So it's not to say that all I need, brother, is a long time with God, just me and God, brother, just me and God. I don't need anybody else. No, God didn't build us and make us that way. We don't function in isolation. We thrive in community. We thrive. We were built, and established to be social beings too. Okay, and so we thrive in community. But this just a reminder, to assert, to affirm, what is present, what is true, and what is accessible for all of us. And so the unveiling, as the brother says, to that people are simply sleep, and they need to be waking up. They just simply sleep to, the reality of their nature, the reality of them being a spirit being, right? Having a natural spirit instead of, a human having a spiritual encounter. We're more than the sum of our parts. I like to say, we're more than the sum of our parts, and so I hope, in tracking with us, in Sunday School Live, exploring, the certain thinking. This is not to demonize. This is not to criticize. My experiences are just what they are. Your experiences are just what they are. Not to be bitter over it. But to raise awareness. Like I said, this is not an answer show. This is a question show. I would rather leave. If you come on this show, I'm going to leave you with more questions than answers. Okay, but an exploration show. This is just to explore. To consider. What I'm sharing. The experts of these particular subjects and the content that I share, the supplemental videos, and resources that I share. Is just to flush out. These terms. Give some context to it, look at it from different perspectives, whether that's philosophical, uh, biblical, scientific, if you will, and look at it and just kind of look at it from a well-rounded perspective to give us more of a substantive uh, understanding of something that we sometimes are conditioned and just to look at it and just in one narrow way. Narrow is the way, brother. If it ain't in the scriptures according to our beliefs, sometimes the narrow way in some instances become so narrow minded. um, but like you said, this is not new or exclusive to these ideas and notions are not exclusive to uh, uh, the Christian faith. It's typical found in a lot of monotheistic religions, right? Or this perception of spirituality or this perception of spirit and only perceiving it in a dualistic way. And I think I probably hit on some of um, the dualistic aspects of thinking, and just kind of explore that. Again, is not to say, well, hey, my perspective or my thoughts and my thinking, is exclusively the right way, but it's to provoke us to think and to have a conversation and have a dialogue. And as I'm seeing up here, I don't know if comments are really coming in here off my phone, but I'm hearing it says, yes, your our nature is, great question. And it can't really bring up the commentary. But listen, you're more than welcome to flow and dialogue with me, even as I flow. Just take time to acknowledge your comments here. This is not just the Jermaine show. This is our show. This is our journey of exploration and exploring, and rethinking all the aspects of a lot of things, with respect to spirit and truth, exploring. So this is the exploration show, okay? So bring out your what's the little thing, your microscope, or the God, dog, what's this thing? You usually magnifying glass, right? An investigator take the magnifying glass and he tracks on the ground. This is us. That's what we're doing. Listen, we're gonna look at things. We're gonna look at some of the nuances of things, and we're just gonna I'm gonna say attack it. Approach it. Kind of like what an archaeologist would do. And shifting through the rubble and making distinctions, of what is bones and what is actual stones and wood and dating things and kind of putting the pieces of the puzzles together, right? So this is a journey of exploration. And there's the great commentators for those that are tuning in, and tracking with me. Listen, I'm a voice on here, but I'm not the only voice on Goma. Listen, there's a diversity of gifts, and voices that I strongly encourage you to follow, and to follow them as well. And it's like a channel, right? uh, you know, uh, this is an awesome channel that's here. I think it's a creative and awesome idea, versus turning into like this is an alternative to TVN, a God TV, and things like that. So if you ever was looking for an alternative, Goma is the place to be. So like, comment, and share, 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 share. And please, if you want to share, put in the comment section that you share, because there'll be times periodically where I do drawings and I gift you a book. And I did that over the holiday season. There was a few great folks that was following us and tracking with us, and we did a drawing, and there was two people that we gifted books, around the Christmas holiday. And so this is a giving show too. Listen, there's opportunities to give, and I appreciate that if you do. If you don't, the opportunity is always there. Just wanted, because some people do ask, about the ways to give, and sharing, and when I do share, so I appreciate that. But more than anything, this is an opportunity for us to dialogue and to journey together. And so, even in my song, you love my song. Listen, Father Abraham, Father Abraham, is was Sunday school was my thing. That if you pay attention to the theme of the show, Sunday school was my thing. You hear me? I'm a church boy by heart. And um, uh, uh, Father Abraham was just one of those songs. We drove that song into the ground. And I want to do something real quick. Just listen. If you go back, let me bring this up. This picture here. I want you to pay attention to this picture. It was just this kind of how my thinking is. I'm kind of radical in some aspect, and so I was going into the church, to do Sunday school live, and I blew it up. So that's part of the branding thing here in my intro. So hold on. I don't know if you really like analyze the picture in the door of the church. Let me bring him up. Uh, my little professor. And so in the door is the little professor, right? So I had someone to do some graphics for me, and they did this professor. I said I kind of want him to have that Einstein kind of look and feel, in this show. But that's my heart. That's my mind, and I want to thank you guys for tracking with us here at Sunday School Live. Please feel free to leave comments, share any questions. I'm open to them. If you want to know about these resources, feel free to please ask. And again, take the time to um, you know honor Martin Luther King with your family, and play, some excerpts from his speech, and things like that. So, other than that, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode 8, part 2 of Sunday School Live with your host, AKA the Professor, Jermaine Thomas, AKA the Professor. And we're going to go out with my favorite song. Had many sons, many sons had Father Abraham. Well, I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Father Abraham had many sons, many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord.